Hello, my name is Nicole Schauder. I'm a parent here at Rolling Ridge, and I'm also the garden coordinator. I wanted to take the time to explain the school gardens for the fall 2016 so that you can know how best to utilize it within your targeted SOLs. My goal is at the end of the next video that is specific to your grade, you will be able to best decide how to use the garden, when to use it, and how to best incorporate it within your lessons. So let's start by taking a tour of the garden. These are the garden beds. These are the raised beds, and there is one for every grade except for pre-K students who have their own little area on the other side of this wall. Each raised bed is 4 foot by 3 foot and is made from cedar wood, which is safe and generally the most waterproof of all woods of choice in North America. So in the fall, you can have your students grow lettuce. This is some lettuce here that's been grown over the summer. Peas, radish, carrots, cabbage, and cauliflowers. In the winter, you can have your students plant garlic, potatoes, and onions. Here we have some Swiss chard. That's a summer crop, but it goes well into the fall. And in the spring, you can plant beets, carrots, peas, radish, kale, cold-loving herbs like cilantro, and many flowers. Over here last year on the 4th grade bed, a teacher had her students plant zinnias. This is a marigold coming out here, and these are zinnias. And I'm here in the pre-K area, which is the other wall, and this is also where you will find the water key. So I wanted to talk to you briefly about the water outlet that's you can see here. And if you would like to plant with your students and need to use the hose, there is a water hose outlet located against this wall, and Mr. John, the custodian, holds the key and the hose that attaches to the outlet. In the past, teachers have borrowed and lost this key, so he is very cautious about lending it out. But if you do borrow it, please make sure to return it as soon as possible in the custodian's mailbox in the front office. Mr. John works very hard to help us maintain this garden, and if you're watching, Mr. John, thank you so much. I am so grateful for all your work throughout the years in the whole school. I'd like to talk to you briefly about the swales and the berms. And this area here, this rainbow sort of design, was designed to passively collect water so that the watering this part of the garden is kept to a minimum. These areas are called the swales and berms. Swales are irrigation ditches that are dug so that they act as a reservoir to catch the water and hold it, releasing it little by little to this mounded portion here where the grass is growing, and that is called a berm. So the berm is where it's mounded and the swale is where it's a path. Here on this portion here, you can see that we need to remulch the path or the swale, and this is a sustainable feature of the garden that makes this portion need less maintenance. Now the swales, like I said, are what we walk in, and the berms are what we plant in. So what have teachers planted here in the past? The teachers, Mr. Harbert, Mr. Fry, and Ms. Champagne last year had planted daffodils on the berms. So in the spring, you will see a lot of beautiful daffodils coming up to demonstrate bulb growth to children. So far, pre-K students have planted peas on this first row here on the berms, on those berms, those mounds, which is a very good nitrogen fixer for the soil. So it helps rejuvenate the soil, giving back nitrogen to it and fertilizing it naturally. In the summer, these berms have yielded and continue to yield here into the fall heirloom varieties of tomatoes, and that's what we have here. But we will shortly be cutting this back. We've also had, let me see if I can show you some tomatoes growing there. These are tomato flowers. There are lots of cherry tomatoes coming out, and these are delicious heirloom types, non-GMO, organic. Of course, everything is organic here. And when they get red, they're ripe for picking. So if you and your students happen to be out here and there are still tomatoes on the vine, please feel free. These are for the students and for the staff. Please feel free to pick them. I also wanted to point out some. That's red. Would you like to pick it? Okay, go ahead. I also wanted to point out some of the eggplants that are growing on the berms here. And then we have borage, this purple flowers, and comfrey, these leafy greens. Comfrey is an amazing fertilizer that we use to just, very good, go ahead, is it red? You can pick it. We just chop and drop it. So in the future, we hope to intensify planting here, which means more things closer together so that the grass doesn't overgrow on the berms, and only with perennials so that the maintenance is negligible. Eventually, hopefully, our goal is to make this the least maintained part of the garden. Perennials will be berry bushes, bulbs, flowers, beneficial plants that return every year and are easy to maintain. Not like the annual vegetable beds which are behind me. I also wanted to point out the corner here where we have grown sweet potatoes. Now in the garden there is a tool bench, and in it you will find some trowels, scissors, some water jugs, some plant ties, and some gloves. You'll also find some bigger tools like children's sized spades and shovels. These are the worm towers here at the school. So we do recycling and composting with the snacks of the children in the Sprouts Club. And you're welcome to have the students bring rotten fruit from the garden or their own snacks to compost here. And it dissolves into good, rich fertilizer for the garden beds. Right now those are not yet dissolved. Basically they look a little bit like this top layer here when they're ready to harvest. This is called an Aframe, which is a device that the ancient Egyptians used to determine the center of gravity, or the center of whenever they would dig irrigation channels along contour lines, they would determine this using an A-frame, and that is how to use it is another video in of itself, which I'll try to produce with the children of Sprouts Club this year. But it's a handy tool for creating swales, irrigation ditches on contour. Finally, I'd like to point out two semi-dwarf fruit trees in the other side of the garden, on the other hand of not that side, but the side that's not so used. This is a semi-dwarf apple tree, and that one is as well. Let's see if you can see it. They were planted here 2 years ago with the help of the Boy Scouts, and they blossom in the spring and are harvested in the summer. Now when you see the blossoms turn into, we had several blossoms turn into apple fruit. Once we point them out to the students, they are very eager to pick them before their time. So it's just I mean, it's better than it not being noticed at all. But just to be aware that in the spring, it's not the time for harvest yet, even though you see those small apples, but it's the summer. And hopefully students come back in the summer during the July harvest days to pick the fruit off of these trees. And that ends our tour of the Rolling Ridge Edible Gardens. I hope that has clarified some of the questions you may have had about this space. Please join me in the next video concerning what is specific to your grade level that you teach, where I talk about the SOLs you can hit and what is growing in each particular bed this season. Thank you very much once again. For any questions, comments, or if you have any if you need any resources such as seeds, plants, soil, mulch, or garden manipulatives, please feel free to reach out at daveandnikki@gmail.com. My name is Nicole Schauder once again, and we hope that you guys can make use of this garden as much as possible. Thank you. Bye-bye.